thank you everyone for being here, and thank you Donna for introducing us, and thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. Uh, how many of you heard about MCP? Okay. How many of you think that it's an spy tool in this museum? Thank you. Because we use the word demystified here without knowing that we're going to present this in the spy museum. So it's completely coincidental. We did not know that we are going to present the spy museum, but it works out pretty well, right, to start presentation. So as Donna has given a complete overview of what we're talking about, we'll just start with the agenda of what we have here, which is we'll start with welcome introductions, which Donna already did, and why MCP needs demystifying, what MCP is, what MCP is not, best practices for developing and managing MCP servers, and then the most important part, which is MCP in our Progress Agentic RAG stack, how we have implemented that, and we are open for Q&A. So 3 people, Irfan, Biju, and Ramon. We all 3 of us have worked on different phases of our progress journey on MCP. We don't know each other when we start working on MCP. And then we collectively got to know that we are working on trying to solve similar problem for different products. That's a very interesting piece. That's why 3 of us are here, so that we can share our experience with you, share the best practices that one could follow, and see what we offer to you as a Progress Agentic RAG solution with MCP enabled inside it. MCP was, as John Ainsworth has mentioned in his keynote presentation yesterday, was introduced by Anthropic in 2024, in late November or early December. The main purpose why Anthropic introduced MCP servers was because if you have experience with using Copilot or Claude or cursors, the problem was at that point of time context, limited context and getting the data from various sources. It was very, very difficult to do that. At certain point of time, you were stuck with limited context. You had to figure out on how to clean up your context and enable that or add extra context. MCP was a technology at that point of time which was introduced to make sure that you can get dynamic data, dynamic context across multiple tools that are deployed across various resources, which are your resources, into your IDEs, like Copilot or your Visual Studio or Cursor or whatever it could be. Later on, this curve, it went pretty high, and then people started using MCP for different things, various reasons, and you are seeing how MCP is being utilized right now across IDEs, chat applications, browser, mobile, whatever you say. We have applications in the agentic frameworks using MCP as a retrieval source. The protocol or the architecture is kind of pretty simple and similar if you have known client-server architecture. You have a server. On the server, you can expose your Postgres database, Amazon database, or Salesforce. It could be anything. If you expose them as MCP servers, then we have MCP client, which they both can talk. They both can communicate using the same protocol. And they use JSON RPC protocol, and they provide different kinds of transports, STDIO, HTTP, and SSC, which is deprecated. STDIO is something that you use with your desktop-based applications or your IDEs so that it's something specific to your development environment. And when you want to go something beyond having remote MCP servers, that's where you use SSC or HTTP. Simple, right? And then you have LLM over there, which communicates with your MCP client, where it extracts the data from the MCP servers and then get recommendations from the LLM, understand which tool to use, which tool to execute, and give you the right response. I like today's presentation by Ed Kiesling and Shashi, where they talked about, don't talk like geeks to your customers. Dumb it down. I like that, and I think that's what we're trying to do in our first half of the session, where we'll try to explain to you in details about what MCP is, how does it work fundamentally, and then we'll move on to the next level. So why MCP needs demystifying? So when they started, the name was Model Context Protocol. I did not understand it when I just looked at that name. I have to understand, I have to go inside it and try to understand what it is trying to do. So that's why it's, number 1, confusing name. Number 2, complex documentation. If you go into MCP by Anthropic, amazing documentation, but it is very much specific to someone who is an architect, who is into architecture, who understands how things work in the transport layer. Number 3, developer first. So implementation details versus business value is not completely given by Anthropic themselves, but rather the people who have implemented their MCP servers, they try to produce that data on what kind of business value they give by providing MCP servers. Multiple moving parts. You have client, you have server, you have LLM. Does your data really talk with LLM? Am I sending my data to LLM? So there are multiple questions, and people are not clarified with that answer on, is my data secure or not? Abstract examples. We, in the business world, we would like to know exactly how my data has been consumed. We don't get that kind of examples until unless you implement them. So we don't have clear examples, but very abstract examples. And then jargon overloaded. So instead of saying features or functions, they say capabilities. Now, what are capabilities? So these kinds of jargons that they use is something that someone who would like to use MCP, it's very, very hard. So what we want to do is that, unlike Udal, who talks about, telling about agentic RAG to his niece, we'll try to be business users here. We'll try to see what we can do at our best. Not as good as Udal. Udal, you can just tell us if you're wrong at any point of time. But yeah, we'll try to be as best as we can, explaining in a very simple terms. If I want to put it in one line, what MCP is? MCP is just standardized protocol that lets AI securely access your documentation, your apps, your data. That's it. It's just all code. It's just all a framework defined by a protocol. You can imagine that as a REST API service for AI agents. That's all it is. Now, how does it work? Let's go into the era of pre-MCP era, or the time where we were trying to build a lot of agents, right? Everyone is trying to build an agent. If I have to build an agent, and if I do not have RAG as a source, what would I do? I would just try to build APIs using my LLMs, which I have, like Anthropic or OpenAI or Gemini, and then I have my backend services. My backend services could be REST API services. My backend services could be database services. So I'm going to build all of them. And these would be two different kinds of solutions that I would be building if I don't have MCP. And my job is to expose this to customers. How would I do that? If I'm building the solution at the left, and Ramon is going to build the solution at the right, you need two different clients to talk with them, because he'll be building in something in his own ways, in his own terms. I'll be building something in my own ways, in my own terms, because there is no standard. The problems with this approach is that we have huge maintenance challenges, where, as I was just explaining to you, two different clients talking with two different servers. There is no way that you want to have two different clients set up to talk with multiple number of servers. So you have n times n problem. And then you have security issues, because everyone is implementing in their own way. We don't have standardized way of implementing or executing security. So we have to define security. And we can't have systems that do not have security and not knowing that what level of security they do implement. Number 3, performance and efficiency. From context fetched for every request, and no smart loading mechanism already, or no smart caching mechanism already implemented as part of the agent, one has to implement something of their own, and then again, it'll be custom for your own servers. It's not something that you can say, I'm following a standard and doing the things in the right way, so any client can go and talk with my application or my agentic application. Scalability limits, development and operations overhead, business impact, all of this, they all come into picture once you start building something that is very specific to you, your needs, and do not cater to be used by clients that are standardized. What MCP does is MCP tries to resolve this problem by building one common protocol, which is Model Context Protocol, which is unified interface, intelligent routing, and it does standardized communication. Imagine the servers at the bottom altogether. Customer support MCP server, which is my REST API service. I have a bunch of them deployed over there. And then I have developed database servers. I can have Postgres, I can have MarkLogic, I can have OpenRes database, I can have SQL, all of them sitting over there. And then I have different kinds of tools, which are Docker, Kubernetes, that one that I'm managing at my infrastructure point of view. And then I have prompt-based knowledge resources like Perplexity, Bravo, or whatever it is. We can just talk with the same client across all the resources. Isn't this fantastic? It's just like making a HTTP call, right? You're just making a HTTP call and communicating with all your resources with just one protocol. And that's how AI can talk with your servers that are on your enterprise infrastructure. And we can expose the functions that we have here, something like this. You can see how I'm exposing the functions. I have get order status, search tickets, perplexity chart, browser web search. I have multiple functions, and I can expose all these functions all the way to my MCP client in a standard protocol-defined manner. So let's dive into those functions. Let's dive into understanding what these functions are, what do they do, what is the purpose of each one of them. So MCP server starts on exposing its functions as three different things, which are predominantly called as tools, prompts, and resources. We also have additional things called as sampling and elicitation, but they are advanced. We don't need to talk about that right now, but we can always talk about it once the session is finished, and we can go into details about it. It's always fun to talk about MCP and AI stuff. And then the protocols, as I mentioned to you, we have JSON RPC protocol that it's been used for the MCP, and the transports are STDIO, HTTP, and server-side events, which is SSE. What are tools? Tools, imagine them as just your REST API functions, right? You want to say get customer, that's a tool. You want to say get inventory, that's a tool. You want to say update my database record, that's a tool. So you expose them as functions, as tools, and they are given all the way to the MCP client. Now what are prompts? Prompts is where your business logic can lie as a prompt that will help the LLM or the client and the LLM to decide how to execute your business process. You want to say that which items are running low. What does low means? How does LLM know what low means, right? You have to define what low means. And you have to define what items means. So you can define a nice prompt, and you can explain that in my prompt, when I say something is low, go to this tool, get me the inventory right now, and then go to another tool, understand what the information I got it from, and then execute some of the tool so that I can amalgamate the data, present the data all the way back to the client, and present it to it in such a way that it can extract the right information and provide it back to the user. That's what prompts are. Resources. Resources are data sources, which could be static or dynamic, and that the model can reference to inform response and promote context-aware answers. It's as simple as you have a CSV file on your enterprise server. You want to expose that information. You have a JSON file. You have a PDF file. You have information about catalog information. So if you have any of this information, you can say that you can expose them as resources. So we're doing three things here. One is tools, which you are trying to expose your RESTful APIs, RESTful services. Number two is that prompts, where you're defining your business process. Number three is resources, where you have your catalog information or any kind of resources that you want to expose to the customer. That's all we're doing. Now, how does this MCP workflow works out? We have MCP server, MCP client, and user application. So before the MCP client goes and makes a handshake with the MCP server starts up and says that I'm all up. Anyone who have valid credentials, valid authentication can go and communicate with me. MCP client initializes it and says that I have, as a MCP, because I am an MCP client, I'm following a certain protocol. This is what I follow as capabilities, as features. Then MCP server, it gets the first handshake from the client. It understands the capabilities and says that I also have the following capabilities, which means I have tools, I have prompts, I have resources. This is what I support. So now once the handshake is done, then the initialization process is finished. Now what's the next step? After initialization, the connection remains persistent for that client and the server, and then the client can go make the next call, which is execute me this tool, execute me this prompt, all this kinds of stuff. So as I mentioned earlier, what are tools, prompts, and resources? They're all defined on the left side. I already explained that to you, so I'm good, I think. Now let's talk in the layman terms, how does it even work, right? So user application, chatbot, my mobile chat app, whatever it is, I start from there and I start saying that show me all the inventory available right now. Now what does it do? It makes a call to MCP client. MCP client, as I mentioned to you, also has an LLM with it. It also communicates with the LLM. So what it does is that, okay, You ask me a question about show me all the inventory. I have the information right now from the MCP server on different tools, different prompts, different resources that it offers. So I'll take this data of context that you provided and the query, and then I'll ask the LLM saying that, can you recommend me which tool should I use, which prompt should I use to execute? Now, what does the LLM do? LLM will tell that, I think based on the context you have and based on the query that you asked for, this is the right tool for you to execute. So then the server executes, the client executes that tool on the server. The server is just a REST API kind of a service. It understands the tool, executes the tool, gives back the response. Now the client takes the response, gives to LLM. Now LLM, based on the response it gets, it figures out that, is this enough for me for the given question, or do I need to ask one more call? Do I need to make one more call to another tool? And it'll keep on going until it gets the right response. So once it gets the response, once it thinks that it has rephrased the response and summarized the response, it'll give the response, LLM will generate the response to the client, and the client will send the response back to the user. That's it. That's basically it. We'll get something like this in simple terms. You'll get your data. You'll get your ERP data, your business enterprise data as part of NLP queries. When you query it, you'll get this kind of data. And there's the mechanism that goes beneath the flows of agentic solutions that you build, which has MCP capabilities. Now, what MCP is not? We talked about what MCP is. It's very, very important that we should know what MCP is not, what it is not capable of, or what you think it could be, right? MCP is not another AI model. MCP is no way doing anything with AI, just a protocol which helps you to take the data that you gave as NLP query, takes the information and go calls the MCP servers to execute your application logic and gets back the response. That's all it's trying to do. It's a helper tool for your AI, but it's not AI. A storage system, it does not store your data. It has nothing to do with the data. It just executes a tool, gets back the response. An AI agent platform, definitely not. It helps you in building AI agent platform, but it's not an AI agent platform. A fix for bad AI, AI or your LLM might give you a bad response. It could be because of various reasons, but it's not because of MCP. MCP is just fetching the data based on what you asked for. MCP client server compatibility isn't universal. The reason is MCP client and MCP server, both of them follow a protocol. But the client could have been developed for SSE protocol or HTTP protocol, where the server has been developed for specifically HTTP or STDIO. So there are certain reasons why the client and the server could not be completely universal, but most part they have to work. But if you have some differences, then you will not be able to talk. But that's why it's very important for us to know that you can have your servers in different versions, different protocols, and then the clients could be something different. They are catered to do something different. And ready to use out of the box. There's something that people think that it is MCP servers are something that it is ready to use out of the box. No, you have to develop the MCP servers at most part. If you want to develop an MCP server for your enterprise application, you have to develop something that says that my MCP server is going to return so-and-so functionality, and it is not going to expose so-and-so critical functionality. That is something you can define easily when you try to develop or build MCP servers. Bottom line, what MCP is. MCP is just a universal connector between AI and your world. Your world is database, your world is applications, your world is APIs. You're just bridging a gap where you want to extract your data and give it to AI so that it can understand it, and for your NLP queries, it can give the right response. That's what MCP is. I think this gives a very base understanding of what MCP is. Now what we want to do is that we want to understand how we can implement this in our products. So for that, Biju, I think I would invite him to talk about how he tried to use MCP in the Mark Logic database.
Thank you. Okay. So it was in the beginning of this year, somewhere around February, March is where I was doing a rack POC with one of the customers. And the customer architect came to me and asked actually, okay, have you heard about something called MCP server? And I was not surprised actually, because as John was saying yesterday, the term itself was coined from November 2024. right? When Anthropic open sourced MCP, right? So yeah, people were learning about it. This was becoming a buzzword. I said, okay, yeah, I've heard about MCP server. What do you want to do with it actually? So their question was, okay, we have already ingested all the data, the graphs are developed, the data is exposed as relational data in the database. So, but I want to use it as an MCP server, as an agent. So do we need to like move this data to some other compatible database to make it happen? And then he bombarded with so many jargons, as Irfan was mentioning, like capability exchange, prompt, server, client, SSE, STDIO, so many things actually. So I asked them, okay, what is your preferred stack? Are you a Java shop or Python or Node? What do you want actually? Then they said that it's a Java shop. I said, okay, give me a couple of days. Let me try what it is. And in a couple of days, actually, I could give them an MCP server on MarkLogic. Okay, not because I'm super smart actually, because it is that easy. It is not that difficult actually. Yes, I made it a little bit easier for me by using a framework, which is Spring AI framework I used actually. And if their answers were different, like Python, I would have chosen LangChain or LangChain 4J, something like that actually. But as Irfan indicated, the frameworks give an abstraction on the underlying protocol, but the underlying protocol is JSON RPC. Okay, so if you, instead of couple of days, if you take couple of weeks, then yes, using the bottom line, the base protocol layer itself, you can build without using any framework, because some customers, some companies are not very favorable of using frameworks. Okay, so how that could happen is because actually MarkLogic already gives a set of Java APIs, right? And these Java APIs can be used for building MCP servers with JSON. It works with JSON RPC, or if you want using a framework like Spring AI or LangChain 4J, you can use those APIs to build the MCP servers, right? So it is very fast to build, use the existing APIs, build it along with the framework code or the JSON RPC packages. And it seamlessly integrates with the existing workflows and the enterprise architectures, right? So so what happened was basically this customer, after I gave the MCP server, of course, we developed it further and made it more rich and secure and stuff like that, actually. Then he said that, okay, you know that we were also developing MCP servers. I have some MCP server from my team in Python. Now, we want to make it work together. Then I said that, you know, the beauty about MCP protocol is basically the discoverability of the servers in the bigger ecosystem. So the server that we built it can be discovered by your MCP client. Okay, so just put this server into the agentic workflow, right? So they added this into the agentic workflow, and now the servers that I built and the servers they built together became part of the of a workflow actually. So it seamlessly integrates with the workflows. It is flexible from MarkLogic side. As I mentioned, this customer had already has data in JSON format, exposed in relational format through TDEs. They have graph data which can be accessed through Sparkle. So all the structured, unstructured data is all like native things to MarkLogic, right? So, and of course, MarkLogic comes with all the security and scalability and high availability features, right? So you don't need to like essentially don't get scared with MCP server and start moving the data around to some database which says that actually we have like out of the box MCP server. We can build MCP servers as well. So on the right side, what you see, that is your right side, what you see the picture is the what we can essentially do actually, MCP client, and you can interact with the cloud APIs, knowledge graph, which is the semaphore, business rule, which is Corticon, database, which is MarkLogic, right? Any of these systems can be exposed as MCP servers. So this is a couple of example screenshots, analyzing unstructured data. And the chat text essentially ask a question, and basically this is an agent which interacts with unstructured data. This is structured data. The question is more like an aggregate query, and it gives a report style of information back. And this is graph data, which is again responding in natural language, how that graph data is analyzed. Okay, so this one is essentially, this agent is converting the natural language question to Sparkle, whereas the previous one was converting that agent converts the natural language question into SQL. And the one before that converts the natural language question into CTS search queries. Okay. So, okay, now best practices for developing MCP servers, right? So I was thinking of talking it authoritatively on this topic, and but then I was hearing the keynote in the morning session by Ed, and Ed was essentially saying that nobody here is having 5 years of ChatGPT experience, right? So, of course, when it comes to MCP servers, nobody is here with experience with more than few months of MCP server experience, right? So, I learn along with them, as Irfan was mentioning. I learn with the customers, and we co-developed, okay, these are some best practices that we believe that that should be incorporated, right? One is the MCP server design. MCP servers are, they should focus preferably on a single domain, stateless operation, so that they independently work on a particular functionality, right? Whether it is just taking a weather API, okay, let it do that only. Don't confuse it with the doing 5 things with different inputs and stuff like that. Security and permissions, it's an important topic when it comes to AI in general, right? The MCP servers can result in a different threat level, actually, or a different threat level than the traditional RAG approaches. Okay, so for example, the data access scope, right? So LLMs do not have access to your data, but agents have. Okay, so agents have access to your data, that is your enterprise data. So you have to ensure that the agents are built securely. I mean, the MCP servers should be built securely, that actually your security is not getting compromised. Okay. Also, another security aspect is like the trust boundary, right? The servers can span into multiple systems, right? So your trust boundary changes. So the top two, another enterprise level two security problems are actually, one is known as, typically, I mean, somebody coined the name, it's known as shadow MCP, which means that actually anyone can build an MCP server actually. Okay, anyone can build an NP server and just put it in your server, right? It might be built with the right intention, but it is unmanaged, creating blind spots in your security posture, right? So make sure that there are mechanisms in the enterprise to look for shadow MCP, MCP servers that might be like connecting to your client is connecting to actually. And then tool poisoning is another one. Tool poisoning always exists in AI, in the RAG solutions and all. But as Irfan was mentioning, the LLMs make determination on which tool to invoke with the description of the tool that is given to the LLM, right? So if you intentionally put harmful instructions in the tool description, that can create problems, right? So, and then context size management, then tool organization, and I'm not going to explain each of them actually. MCP resource management, like where actually as I told, it is like dynamic discovery of MCP servers is possible. Then prop design is very important. Then intelligent tool selection and caching, Of course, then the typical stuff, documentation and testing, discovery, filtering, and version updates, all those things needs to be taken care when you are designing, managing MCP servers. But this all lands up, okay, so I was talking about learning, right? So I built this MCP server, and then I'm hearing about Progress acquiring Nuclea, rebranded into Progress, Agentic RAG. And then I feel that, okay, what I did for this customer is all out of the box available. Okay, it is now out of the box available, the end-to-end, right from the ingest flow all the way to, in fact, additional features like quality metrics, those kind of things are available out of the box. And that is what Agentic RAG is all about. So the final, I would say, is basically good prompts guide complex workflows, right? Your prompting in MCP agentic workflow is done through tool descriptions, the prompts that you configure, and those prompts determine like actually how good the workflow is, how performant you are, not from a performance standpoint, but how accurate the response, how good the reasoning capability is. I like one more thing that you had mentioned in the morning actually, that is LLMs have immense knowledge, okay? There is no doubt about it. But it has, anyone remembers what he said? I mean, LLMs have knowledge, but no understanding, right? It doesn't have understanding. It doesn't understand your business, your data, it doesn't understand. It doesn't have the context. You have to provide it through good prompting mechanisms, okay? With that, I will invite Ramon to talk about what Agentic RAG all about.
Thank you so much, Biju. So, well, MCP, as you've seen, is kind of an evolution of what was RPC, Corba. It's just a way to talk machine to machine. It just now it's fancy, no? AI, it's whatever, where we have everything, so we need to connect this remote process however we want to call, thank you, Biju, to AI, to LLMs. But this evolution has brought something that is completely different from all this connection computer to computer process, is that for the first time, the use case of how to use the API, it's on the same protocol. So we are able to define, so most of you, if you use a REST API and you want to know how to use it, you are going to go to the documentation and start to find out how to use this API call and this API call. And this is kind of misleading for engineers, but for LMs need to be more well-defined. And prompts in MCPs, where you define all the receipts about how to do everything with your API calls. These prompts are written in natural language, different use cases. I'm going to expose a couple of examples about this combination of prompts with tooling. These prompts, they are written in natural language processing, needs to be found and needs to be detected and needs to be raised, belong all the use cases that your API are able to provide. This is where Agentic RAG comes onto the play and allows you to define multiple experiences of your API, multiple interactions that you want to do with your API, and provide the receipt or the instructions about how to use the MCP for the different use cases. So the LLM is able to understand what we really need to do to accomplish our goals. This is the main concept of Agentic RAG with MCP. There is another use case that it's the most easy to show, that it's the union of structured data. Everybody has MarkLogic, Postgres, whatever kind of a structured database. And you also have documents, and you have information manuals, whatever kind of information that it's text or videos. And you want to merge both worlds in one tool. This is the second use case that I'm going to show. So, Progress Agentic RAG is built on top of the best RAG system that was Nuclea. And this provides us the availability to be able to crunch, understand, extract, convert to multiple vectors, provide the best RAG experience ever out of the box in an end-to-end pipeline. This provides us the option to get any unstructured data, the top right side, ready to be queried and ready to be found, any chunk of information or any page or any asset table, wherever you need to be able to connect with your structured information. Of course, we have MCP servers. Irfan and Biju did an amazing job explaining about them. And you can connect any kind of structured information here. And then we have also internet search, any possible structured query that we want to connect. Everything brings context. This context, altogether, guided by the receipts and the prompts and the instructions that we define it, are able to collect all these contexts and be able to, with a multi-turn workflow, being able to query multiple times, understand different steps on the process, being able to finally deliver to the user the answer, connect to the workflow, connect to any user interface, a chat interface, wherever we want. This simple diagram, it takes time to be accomplished because you need to connect, you need to understand, you need to tune, and it's where the prompts of MCP really provides this extra value. So you, for example, let's define one use case. It's going to be easier. On the manufacturing space, I have a query that this happened in a client. They say, I need a sealant to apply on concrete foundations for this type of terrain, which is a mixture of clay and fairly acidic. Sorry. This question by itself, on a chat, how you would go forward after you get this question. First, you need to find a structure match to find out manuals, instructions, products that are able to fix this problem. Okay, so what is the best thing that we can do is split the question in multiple sub-questions, in multiple elements that we need to match. We do semantic, full text, knowledge graph search with all our unstructured data that it's about all our products, and we finally found the set of products that are going to fix this problem for our client. Once we have them, of course, we are in a chat and we want to sell that product. So we would like to know if this product is available in the stock. So the multi-turn system of the Progress Agentic RAG is going to be able to query the database, saying, okay, from all these products that may fix this problem from the client, give me the ones that are in stock. So I can deliver them the URLs that the user needs to buy the product. This is connection of an unstructured, connection of a structured data and an unstructured data. This is a connection of defining use cases. Which is the use case? We need to find products that are available for given a problem from a client. No? This is, you define this is a prompt, you define the multi-turn options, you need to split the query, you need then find on the database this information, natural language, some 4 rules defined in natural language, the MCP server and Progress Agentic RAG, and you have everything ready. Super, easy out of the box. Another example, sorry. Yeah, so in this case, the example is that we are having a situation that we are shipping late. It's already 4 weeks of delay to ship a product, and the system gets this information as an action, as an event in our pipeline and e-commerce retail system. This simple, it's machine-to-machine also communication in this case, because there is an event about this situation. This event triggers a RAG query where we are searching for what to do in this case. Okay, we have this bunch of situations. What we should do? Whatever, if it's a more rule-based system or a RAG query, we get a set of actions that needs to be happen. An instruction, a prompt with all the different options that we need to do. In this case, for example, we want to get all the elements that are less than $10 that we have in stock, and we deliver that to all the deliveries that is more than 3 weeks. MCP server querying for products less than $10 that I have in stock. We just decide to add this and send to the shopping cart. We find the product. We find the product that meets the price. the price rule, and then we send. And a structure combination, just defining in natural language the rules, the use cases, and let the system iterate over the different elements that are in the table. I would like to, because we are running out of time. Well, first, if you want to use Progress Agentic RAG, this is the QR. You can sign up, have a 14 days trial. This is the out of the box and structured to, you push any kind of file, any kind of link, any kind of information that you want, text, and we are going to crunch, we're going to make it ready to be able to connect to any MCP server, to be able to query directly from a chat interface, wherever you need. But the next step, it's the full Progress Agentic RAG experience. So this is a sneak peek of this agentic workflow that I was explaining before. In this case, we have multiple rules. What we are going to do on the pre-process side, on the retrieval side, on when we need to generate on the post-process, at each step, there is different agents that are going to be interacting. If we want to have guardrails, if we want to have multiple sources of information to collect all these contexts and being able to define an MCP, or just ask to our Progress Agentic RAG system to get unstructured information and summarize and generate a final answer. Just a sneak peek of the final product with all the features that we have today. Yeah. And the QR. Well, that was all. I don't know if there is any question. We have 5 minutes, 10 minutes to questions. Okay.
How much does it cost after the 14-day trial?
Oh, that's a question for Odal. It's here. Odal, do you want to? How much money do you have?
Not enough.
I have a question about input validation. So we're talking about allowing an LLM to interact autonomously with your database or your whatever. If the LLM, in its infinite wisdom, decides that it should do select star on a massive table or delete a bunch of data, are there guardrails somewhere? Is that the responsibility of the MLCP server, whoever's writing that? How does that work?
Well, I would say that you don't implement on your MCP server something that can delete your database, because I'm sure that you don't want to offer that as an option as first initial step. And of course, guardrails are can be super strict. Rule-based, it's even more strict. So rule-based systems are still super valid. Do not apply an SQL call that has a delete, no, on it, and these kind of things that can be super specific. But most of the systems that are MCP on retrieval side doesn't need to have write permissions, which then it's much more safer.
So you can do scope gating. So when you define your tools, you can do scope gating by saying that for a specific user, he should not be doing certain actions for a specific tools. So you can only do read operations for a user who are for a specific domain. And then you want to perform admin operations, then that should be a separate user which has a separate admin permissions and scope gating based on that. So at discovery itself, it will not even show you the admin operations if you really are a specific user. You can have that kind of ability to imply security at the server level.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that's our time. Oh, one more? Okay, well, one final question.
In case the time's over, you're still there, so you can come to us and we can show everything that we have.
Hi. The question I have is, I understand because the LLM is there, we might do it, but why would we leave the tool resource pairing up to an LLM, which is non-deterministic?
Well, My opinion is that LLM is deterministic if you guide enough the system and you provide enough focused definitions. So if you have two calls on your MCP, one is get customers and the other is get orders, it's not going to get confused around both of them. But if you have a tool that says get customers and get customers I like, no? Then it's going to be a lot of messiness and non-determinism. So it's important that at definition time, we focus on the prompts and on the way of writing all these things that be super clear.
Thank you.
And also, as part of one of the best practices, I think we are mentioning about when you define a tool should have a right context. You should be providing a right context about what this tool is, what it is trying to do, what it is trying to achieve, what kind of response you expect it to go. So all of that will be part of your tool definitions, and something extra you would like to do for your business, you'll be doing prompts, as Ramon was mentioning. So if you combine both of them, it'll be great. A combination of exposing the right information and then getting the right context for the LLM to understand.
And if finalist thing, why LLM should be used for tool pairing, a different way of looking at it is actually, we are actually using LLM's capability of interpreting natural language, because your questions are always in natural language. Your tool description is written by someone. Again, as said, actually, it should be very descriptive and it should be very clear that LLM do not get confused. But that user language to which tool to invocation, that one is an LLM's capability, because LLMs understand that language. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it.